Welcome to Xenography, where we shoot vintage lenses on mirrorless cameras, and today we're looking at radioactive lenses. These are stunning optics with a unique colour signature that's unlike anything else, but are they safe and should you buy one? If you want to know the answers to those questions, check this one out. If you're fairly new to vintage lenses, you might be surprised to find that there are such things as radioactive ones, and I know I was when I first started using these lenses. I'd been using vintage lenses for a couple of years or so before I happened to read online that some of them were radioactive. And if you have a collection of these lenses, indeed you might find that some of yours are radioactive too. There were quite a lot of them made. They were made from around about 1945-ish up to around about 1975, but do correct me if I'm wrong. I think the majority of them were made from sort of 55 to 75, that sort of area. During the 1960s, colour film was becoming much cheaper, and so it was becoming more popular. More and more people wanted to try colour photography. It was quite a big thing at the time. The consumer market was really rising and expanding very quickly at this time, and that was driven in large part by the availability of cheaper colour film. So there needed to be some new lenses to be able to make the most of this new film. Much photography during the 1940s and 1950s happened largely in black and white. That was the film that was commonly available. Colour film, certainly in the 1940s and the early 50s, was very, very rare, and when you could get hold of it, it was really expensive. So most amateur photographers at that time used black and white, and that often happened, or even usually happened, using uncoated lenses. Uncoated lenses were very common in the first half of the 20th century, and they are what they sound like. They're photographic lenses without an anti-reflective coating that was applied to later lenses from around about 1950 or 1960 onwards. Now, those lenses, uncoated lenses, they're great for black and white. They make really, really nice black and white shots. And in fact, there's an argument for saying that they make nicer black and white shots than coated lenses do. But to make use of colour film, then manufacturers needed lenses with anti-reflective layers. That's the anti-reflective coating on the front of the lens and later applied to all the optical surfaces of the lens. And they also needed lenses with new glass that could better deal with colour photography and make a nicer image on a colour negative. At some time during the 1930s or the 1940s, I'm not quite sure when, but thereabouts, it was realised that adding a small amount of a chemical compound called thorium oxide would very much improve the performance of a lens. It was found that it gives a high refractive index, which means that light travels more slowly through a lens, through the glass, and bends more easily, so the light could be more easily manipulated by the lens. And it also gives glass low dispersion qualities, and that property makes sure that colours are not spread out in the image that lands on the negative, so you get sharper images, fewer aberrations, for example, less chromatic aberration with low dispersal lenses. So adding this compound gave glass much better performance. It allowed lighter and smaller lenses to be made with better optical properties. it allowed for simpler designs, and that meant lower manufacturing costs, which could be passed on to the consumer. The problem is that thorium oxide is radioactive. Thorium is a metal. Thorium oxide is the oxide of thorium, so it's sort of analogous to rusty iron. It's the oxide of a metal, and it was found that adding it to glass gives it these much improved optical qualities. Without thorium oxide added, these lenses would be bigger, they would be heavier, and they would be more expensive. So it was a win-win situation all round. Now, as I've said, I do use radioactive lenses myself from time to time. I love the colours that they make, and I find that the colour signature is just unique. They are literally like nothing else. So I'll go through the ones that I have at the moment. I've got 3 at the moment. Let's just pick up the first one. This is the Konica 57mm f1.4, and I never like to look directly down the barrel of these lenses. I never do that because I'm very aware that there are alpha particles coming out of this lens right now. It's actually happening right now, even though I can't see it. So I never look right down the barrel. I always look obliquely like that to see what the lens actually is, and I think that's one of the safer handling practices, but we'll come on to safety shortly. So this is the Konica 57 f1.4. This is a lovely lens, and I bought this, gosh, about 4 or 5 years ago from the Photographica meeting in London. It's a beautiful lens. It gives stunning colour. It gives colour like nothing else. It's not very sharp wide open because it's from an older generation of lenses, so it's a little bit soft wide open. It's not horribly soft, but it is soft. But if you stop it down to f2.8, my goodness, it certainly sharpens up and becomes very, very sharp indeed. And of course it retains that incredible colour profile, that incredible colour signature, which is why I love these radioactive lenses. So I have kept hold of this one. I do intend to sell this one on shortly, but I've kept hold of it up to now just because it makes such fantastic colours. What else have I got? These are cost, by the way. These will cost you, one of these will cost you about £70 to £100 thereabouts. It's a sort of an average cost for a vintage 50 1.4, and even though this is a 57 1.4, it still counts as a 50. So it's about £70 to £100 for one of these. You could also get or consider its later sibling, which I used to have, the Konica 50 f1.4. Some of those are radioactive. I think the earlier ones, mine was radioactive, and some are not. I think the later ones are not radioactive. That lens again gave fantastic colour. You know, those radioactive colours. They're very pumped up, they're very saturated, they're very big, they're very in your face, and that's how I like colours. I think if you're going to have colour, if you're going to shoot colour, let's shoot big colour, and that's how it seems to work for me. So I love what these radioactive lenses can do, and their colour signature is not the same as other lenses. There are other later vintage lenses, 51.4s or 1.8s, that don't have thorium oxide added. They give lovely colours, they give fantastic colours, but none of them are quite as fantastic, in my view, as the radioactive lenses. Those give the best colours, so that's why I use them. So Konica 57 f1.4 and 50 f1.4, both around £75 to £100. This is a lovely cheap little alternative. This is the Pentax 55mm, I think it's a 55. Yeah, 55mm f1.8 Super Takumar. There was also an f2 version, but they are the same lens, the f1.8 or the f2 55mm Pentax, same lens, different markings. I think the f1.8 marking was added to aid sales. It was a marketing thing, but they're the same lens, and it's a beautiful lens. This lens is available for 40 to £60 thereabouts. You don't really need to pay more than 40 if you're patient. This is a lovely, lovely lens, and it's got those radioactive colours. There's nothing like them. This is a f1.8 version, so it doesn't make quite as much blur as the f1.4 versions, but you know, the difference between maximum blur of an f1.4 and an f1.8 lens is not that great, so you know, the difference is not huge. These lenses are beautifully made. The Pentax lenses, they're, I think, the best engineered vintage lenses I've encountered. They're just lovely, and this one is available very cheaply, as I say, between 40 and 60 pounds. This will give you the radioactive colours, and there are plenty of them around. It was a kit lens for these Pentax Spotmatic cameras and the other Pentax M42 cameras. This was a kit lens, so there's loads and loads of them around, and they are pretty cheap. Very, very nice and very, very available. There is a sibling, an f1.4 version of this lens, the Pentax 50mm f1.4. It's not really a version of this lens, it's completely different. It's a 50 and this is a 55, but the 50 f1.4 is a gorgeous lens, and it is a radioactive lens, and its colours are all the more gorgeous for that. I have read online that the Pentax 51.4 is one of the hottest lenses you can buy. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I've not tested it myself with a Geiger counter, but that is what online opinion says. So the 55 1.8 is radioactive, but the 55 1.4 is apparently more so. But it does give you that little bit more blur, and it is just slightly a nicer lens. It gives nicer blur, it's a little sharper wide open, and it's got an f1.4 aperture. A very, very lovely lens, available from £75. There are two versions, the 7-element version, which is cheaper and later, and the 8-element version, which is more expensive and earlier. The 8-element version you can pay up to £150, maybe even £200 for that one. It's very much sought after. The 7-element version between £75 to £110 or thereabouts. Very, very gorgeous lenses, both the 55 1.8 and the 51.4. It seems I've saved the best till last, because this is my favourite radioactive lens. This is, just carefully have a look at what it is. This is the Minolta PF, Rockor PF, 58mm f1.4, and this is a very, very gorgeous old lens. I first came across this lens in a consignment of cameras and lenses that I bought, Konica gear. This was attached to a battered old camera, not this version, but my first version was attached to a battered old camera, and it was a battered old lens, and it wouldn't focus. I couldn't get the focus ring to move. It was horrendously difficult to operate, and it would only focus within a very small range of distance. But I did go out and test it, and within that very small range of distance and the images that I made, I found that this was a very remarkable lens indeed. So I bought another one. This is a early 60s lens. Well, not early 60s, it's probably early to mid 60s, thereabouts. And it's from a time when lens manufacturers were struggling to make a 50 1.4, so they made a 58 1.4. They couldn't quite get that focal length down to 50. So this is one of the older lenses. It's got plenty of thorium oxide in it, I suspect, because it gives the most stunning colours you can imagine. These colours are really saturated, really big, really bold. I think they're the biggest, boldest, most saturated colours from any radioactive lens that I've shot, and that's why I love it, because this is a lens for spectacular colour representation. It's really well made. It's an all metal lens. It's fairly obscure. It's not well known in the vintage lens community, and so that means prices tend to be lower. I bought this one a few years back, about 5 years back, and I paid £30 for it at a time when most 51.4s were going for around about £60 to £70. And looking online recently, this lens is still cheaper than its counterparts from other manufacturers. So if you want a really fantastic, really stunning, absolute knockout, top of the shop vintage radioactive lens, this is it. This is it. If you want a lovely radioactive lens for those lovely radioactive radiation era colours, go out and get one of these and you will not be disappointed. A lovely, lovely old lens with my strong seal of approval. And I think this has quite a few aperture blades as well. Let's have a check. Yes, it does. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 aperture blades. So it keeps those bokeh balls in the background nice and circular when you stop down. Now, if you do buy radioactive lenses and use them, you may find that they are a little bit yellow when you look through them cautiously and carefully. You might find a yellow tint on the glass. That happens because of the radioactive decay changing the refractive index of the lens and making it yellow. UV light reverses it, so if you leave a yellowed lens in sunlight for 2 or 3 weeks, that will reverse the yellowing. Or of course you can just shine a UV torch, strong UV torch through them. That will clear the yellowing more quickly. You might be able to see there's a little bit of yellowing taken place on this 55mm Pentax of mine, so I could leave it in sunlight to unyellow it, or I usually just put it on the camera and let the auto white balance take care of it. That will balance up the shot so that the colours are natural and it will get rid of that yellowing. You can do it by a manual white balance as well. I do that sometimes. That counters the yellowing and brings all the colours back to where they should be. Are these lenses safe? This is what we all want to know. Are they safe to use? Are they going to hurt me? Are they going to cause damage if I use them? Well, radioactive particles and living tissue, living cells don't mix well. We've got these high energy particles shooting out of the lenses, and you know, living cells, they hit a living cell and they can cause damage. It's possible that that can happen. So are they safe? Well, I use them, but the only person who can decide whether you are going to use them is you. I cannot make a recommendation about whether you should use them. You can only decide that for yourself. There are websites that exist to tell you whether a lens is radioactive or not, and some of them have huge long lists of vintage lenses that have had thorium oxide added to them during production. However, the only way you can really be certain whether a lens is radioactive or not is to measure it yourself with a Geiger counter. Many of the people who originally designed and made these lenses are now sadly no longer with us. They were designed and made many, many years ago. Other people who were designed in their who were involved, other people who were involved in their manufacturing are very old now, so we just can't tell by going to the original people which are radioactive and which are not. That's not an option anymore. So the only way to find out whether a lens is radioactive and how radioactive it is to measure it yourself with a Geiger counter. That's the only way to know. You can't rely on online opinion. There is a lot of online opinion about which lenses are radioactive and which are not. Some of that opinion will be absolutely accurate, but some won't. Some will be inaccurate. We know how the online world works. So please, if you want to absolutely know for certain, measure these lenses yourself with a Geiger counter. Now, what kind of radiation is coming out of these lenses? Well, my research that I've done tells me that what's coming out of these lenses are particles called alpha particles. Alpha particles are said to be not very energetic, so they are not thought to be dangerous. It is said that they can be blocked. They're so weak, they have such low energy that they can be blocked by a piece of paper, a lens cap, a lens filter, a hand, even air. A few centimeters of air is said to block these alpha particles. There are some common sense practices that we can use when we're using these lenses. Number one, first and foremost, don't hold them close to your body, especially any sensitive areas of the body. That includes the eye, so never use these lenses as a magnifying glass to look through, to magnify anything by putting your eye very close to them. That could very easily cause damage to the eye, which is made of very, very delicate tissue. There are other very, very delicate areas of the body. You don't need me to tell you where those are. Don't hold the lenses near to those, and generally don't hold the lenses near to your body. I think that's good advice to follow. Don't drop the lenses. Make particularly sure not to drop the lenses. If you drop them, the glass can break. When glass breaks, it splinters into many, many hundreds, possibly thousands of fragments. You don't want radioactive glass dust in your environment, so be particularly careful not to drop them. I would suggest having a filter on them at all times so that helps to block any radiation coming out. And if you do drop them, if you're unlucky enough to drop one, then with a filter on there, none of the dust or less of the dust or particles is going to get out into the environment. So be especially careful not to drop them. I would also say don't dismantle them. When you dismantle lenses, glass is very brittle. It's not impossible that when you're applying force to the lens rings and various components, it's not impossible that little tiny fragments of glass are going to break off. So I would suggest don't dismantle them for that reason. Leave them assembled. If they're dirty, if they've got fungus in them, well done to the fungus for being able to live in a radioactive environment, but if they've got fungus in them, leave them. Don't clean them, leave them alone. That would be my suggestion. But whether they're actually safe to use, that needs to be your decision. I use them for the reasons that I've outlined. Whether you use them and take advantage of these fantastic colours, that has to be your decision. So there we are. That is my take on radioactive vintage lenses. I hope you've enjoyed it and I hope it's been useful. Many, many thanks for watching. If you've watched this far, a particular thanks to you. Many, many thanks go to subscribers for your support. If you've enjoyed this episode, why not subscribe yourself? That would be very much appreciated. All it takes is a little click of the button and it's done. Many, many thanks also go to patrons for your support, and without that support I couldn't make this show in the way that I do, so that is very much appreciated. If you like the work that this channel is doing and you think we're not doing too bad a job of keeping these old optics and the old cameras alive, you might want to become a patron yourself. You can do that over at www.patreon.com/Xenography, and you can do it for as little as $1 per month. Many thanks to everybody who's tuned in, watched, given thanks, given super thanks, made a comment or engaged with the channel in any way. I really do appreciate it all. And if you're not doing anything too awful, difficult, irksome, bothersome, irritating, annoying or downright unpleasant next week at around this time, please do check in and join me for another spot of Xenography. Cheerio all.